Jeff is directing a production of Shakespeare's R&J, which will soon premiere at the Peacock Theatre in Hobart on April the 30th. And today I'm talking to Jeff and two of the cast members, Andreas and Julius, about the play and what it means to them. Jeff, tell us a bit about Shakespeare's R&J, the play, and also the playwright.
Okay. Well, I first saw this play in New York in 1997 when it was in Lower East Manhattan in a very small room that held 27 people. That's what it held, 27 people. I was intrigued because it was a story of Romeo and Juliet, and it was being played by four young guys in that set. It originally was for 5, but they had to cut it back for some reason, so it was 4. I've reintroduced the 5. But it also I really was intrigued by the play from that point of view, and why and how audience received men playing female roles without sort of becoming females. None of that happens. You know, the guys are still guys. That's the thing. And the other thing about the play was it's very, because it was quite simple production. It had a red cloth, a book and a stool and no change of costumes. That was it. And they managed to be able to tell this wonderful story of Romeo and Juliet in that time. But it's also their story as well. It's not just Romeo and Juliet, it's a story of these guys as well. Yeah.
This is the second time that you've directed a production.
Yes. Yeah.
So obviously you find the play quite compelling. What is it about the play that attracts you?
I think it's what I've said before, that I think the way that Joe Colaco had written this particular piece was that it brought in some of the old traditions of Shakespeare, like men playing females roles. Not that I accept that today as being sort of the real reason why we're doing the play. I think also that because Romeo and Juliet is one of those plays that the hostility between the parents of the two protagonists gets lost in the mists of time. We don't quite understand why that was. I mean, okay, they were fighting, but why were they fighting? So there was no danger to it. So when you actually introduce two guys playing those roles, there's another danger, because it brings in the idea of a homosexual element to the play, which is not really what it's about, of course, but it's there, and there is a danger in that. So that was one of the reasons that attracted me to the piece, that you could have this more sort of dangerous love.
And tell me, that goes to the core of what the play is about.
Yeah.
Living by the rules or not.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about the play and what the core ideas are.
Well, the core ideas, it starts, the way I've reinterpreted it, and I did this also in Kuala Lumpur, and you've got to remember in Kuala Lumpur it's a completely different audience and culture.
Yes.
Yeah. Quite a risk up there to have two guys kissing on stage.
And it's still against the law.
It is against the law, and we had to talk very hard and fast to the religious police to make sure that it got through. It got through.
Yeah.
But I think that having those guys play those roles in that way, it means that you really are stretching the boundaries here a little bit more than you normally would, and that I think is intriguing to me, to see how the audiences react to that type of thing. Yeah.
Andreas, you're playing Romeo.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
How are you finding the role?
Yeah, it's actually been so much fun, and it's partly because of that element of danger that the boys get. So the boys worrying about getting caught whilst they're diving into Romeo and Juliet is just really having that kind of alertness every now and then whilst trying to play Romeo and Juliet, and getting the story along just makes it so enjoyable. It's what I found, yeah.
And Julius, you're playing Juliet.
I am, yeah.
How do you find the play? What are your thoughts on the play and the character?
Well, the thing I like the most about this play is the symbolism and the core message behind it. That's something which I really love to be a part of and really appreciate. The fact that this play takes the original script of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet and adapts it into something that doesn't quite change it, but rather expands it and adds onto it as something which I found really interesting. The core message for me being that you should follow your heart, realize your dreams, and live your truth no matter the obstacle. And to be a part of something like that and to portray that on stage is something that offers a lot, not just to the actors, but to the audience as well, and is ever so relevant even nowadays. For Juliet, though, I really loved playing that character. She was quite a pleasant surprise to me. Often when you think about the archetypal damsel in distress, the woman waiting for her Romeo, you often think about Juliet. But when I actually read the play and I was introduced to it via Jeff, I realized I couldn't be further from the truth, and that she is just as human as anyone else, rather than an object of Romeo's love. I love that she has that she's introspective, she is active in the story, she takes charge of situations, but most importantly, she's courageous, and that's why I love Julia and I love the play.
I think I probably should have said, because I lost my train of thought when you asked me a question earlier on, but Ando reminded me that the play is set in 1950s in Australia, in a Catholic institution in any big city, and so it's the rebellious nature of the boys to actually find a script of Romeo and Juliet, which would be a banned piece of literature, because Romeo and Juliet actually has got a lot of information in it that would have been forbidden. One of the key topics is suicide towards the end of the play. Yeah. But before that, it's pretty saucy. There's lots of really double entendre lines within the play. And, like My Naked Flesh is out, or My Naked Weapon is out, I think, isn't it? That type of thing. And so everybody they send it up. And that's the context of the whole thing. And whether or not the boys then can learn anything from the journey after they start playing out the characters. And we use all Shakespearean language 99% of the time to tell the story, both stories.
Well, that makes me think of two questions. Firstly, how are you dealing with the Shakespearean language, particularly you two who may not have had a huge exposure to Shakespeare before? How are you finding that early modern idiom? And secondly, I mean, it's set in the past, at a time and place of great restriction. Is there still an important message from this play today, in an age of like Heartstopper, where there's gay characters all over TV? But the Shakespeare first. How are you dealing with Shakespeare's language?
Yeah, well, it's certainly a challenge. I think this will be the most challenging play I've ever taken on. However, that's why I also believe it's going to be the most rewarding. And in terms of the Shakespearean language, yes, it can be a bit tricky, but where I think the real challenge lies is juggling that on top of everything else you have to do on stage, where you have to deliver your lines with emotion, think about your character, but on top of that, dealing with the technicalities of the Shakespearean poetry, and making sure that you do meet those beats, and that you do deliver those lines in the right way so that it makes sense and it comes across the way it's meant to. It is challenging, but I believe it's something that we've been deconstructing and dealing well with as a team, and with Jeff's guidance as well.
I'll get you to put that in writing.
Okay, well don't blow your head too big over that. But we are very thankful for Jeff. I don't think we would have gotten as far as we would in understanding the text without Jeff. So yes, it's a challenge, but it's very rewarding.
Yeah, to add to that, Jeff obviously he sits with us and we go over every probably fourth word I have to get a definition for. So when you look at our scripts, like I've circled, it's an absolute mess. You don't know where the lines are and what I've written to try and tell me what the meaning of that word is. But I guess also a challenge I've found is being able to, because now I kind of know what the language is and what it means for Romeo and Juliet, but being able to tell the audience in that way without them going through this process is like pretty difficult to then show by your actions and physicality and emotions what is happening, as opposed to sitting down with the audience and going by everyone, this is what this says. We've got to do it just, I guess, naturally and throughout the play and our actions. And so,
there's a movement around the world to try and modernize Shakespearean language, to have it in a language that people would understand more easily today. Is that something that you would like to see, or do you actually, once you've sort of learned the language, do you enjoy it? Do you think that there's something there that is irreplaceable?
I think there's something there irreplaceable, for sure.
I agree. I don't think that you can. I believe that all adaptations can have merit. However, I don't believe that completely modernizing, as you say, the language in the Shakespeare scripts, that there's a way that you can do that without losing some of the hidden meanings of that script in that language. It's very important. And there's things about Shakespeare that, like, the script and the way the language is structured, there's so many ways that it can be interpreted that you can be the biggest Shakespeare expert in the world and you can choose to adapt it and modernize it, and there's still going to be things that you're going to miss. And because of that, I believe that it would be a loss to completely replace it.
It's like if you went to go, say, a Gilbert and Sullivan, for example, people know all the words normally. Well, not everybody, but I know actors that have said to me, I'm singing my song and everybody's in the front row is singing along with me. You know, so they know it, and they come. The reason they come for that is because they know the words, you know. Yeah. And it's the same with the Shakespeare, particularly with verse. But when you get to blank verse, for example, it is in rhyme. And that is what people like. So what my job is to get these guys to do is to play all of the things that Andreas was just talking about in terms of physicality and emotion and things like that, but also to make sure that we can also use the Shakespearean language and the rhyme within the language to make it to complete the picture of Shakespeare.
Now, at this point, going back to the second question, so it's set in a time and place that is sort of seen as an archetype of repression. A Catholic school, boys' school, 1950s. What relevance does it still have today in an age where there's a greater acceptance of gender fluidity and diverse sexualities, and what's the play still say?
Well, for me, I mean, I won't answer for the boys, of course, but for me, I think that all of that George just mentioned is now under threat when you have somebody as one-eyed, if you like, as Donald Trump in the United States. So anything with the DEI symbol, diversity, equality and inclusion, is now being challenged and threatened. So I think that threat is now even more so than before. And I think it's really important to actually keep challenging that. For example, I mentioned Kuala Lumpur a moment ago and the religious police. And that was one thing. But I think the greater danger today is what's happening in the United States and the sort of the mind control and the proper, the right ways to do things according to one type of philosophy. And that's it. I mean, it really is quite a dangerous situation that we're getting to move into if that happens. So one of the reasons I think this is really relevant is to remind people that diversion, inclusion and all of those things that go with it are really important. They're really important and we should not lose sight of that.
More important than ever.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
I believe that it's obvious that this type of play is exceptionally relevant to the matters of the LGBTQ+ community. However, I also believe that a play like this also is functionally immortal and universal to general audiences as well, because as much as the play does have those elements, the core message of the play is so relatable that it can actually apply to any kind of group or person. The idea that, and this is what I was talking about before with how this adaptation takes that original Shakespeare message of following your heart, no matter the obstacle, Romeo and Juliet, and it expands upon it. Because this play doesn't just tackle the idea of following your heart, it tackles the idea of following your dreams, right? So it's the idea of not just following your heart, but making your dreams, your fantasies, a reality. And what's the obstacle from stopping your fantasies from becoming a reality? Well, for Romeo and Juliet, that was the opposing houses, and for these boys, it's the oppressive school. But for any other person, it could be a whole range of things happening in their lives. And the message is to still pursue that and to still live your truth and to fulfill your dreams and follow your heart, no matter whatever the threat is that's standing in your way, because a life worth living is a life where you live your truth.
Any thoughts, Andreas, about the importance of the play?
Yeah, absolutely. I think owning your truth is a big deal. I really like what you said in the last part there. And I guess being able to express that through, hopefully, our passion and I guess energy and emotion, and spoiler, how we die at the end, or Romeo and Juliet die, and I guess seeing how that impacts the boys in this scenario. Well, you'll have to wait and see, but what is told there is really the crux of it, and that's the big deal, seeing if or how they're affected, if at all, by Romeo and Juliet throughout. So, yeah.
You've probably already answered this already, but who are the audience? Who's the audience for the play? Who would you expect to come along or would like to come along?
It's a difficult play in as much to pitch to a particular audience, but I think GLBTI plus people is one, of course. I'm hoping schools, senior students at schools will come for the interpretation of the piece, as Julius was talking about a moment ago. But I'm also hoping that the other audience is the people who really like Shakespeare and want to come and see another adaptation of the very famous play that they all know so well. And they're the three audiences that I think we can target. I'm saying I think it's there for a lot of people. Yeah.
Anything else that you can think of that you'd like to say about the play, or thoughts or feelings about the characters?
Well, the only thing I can say, I mean, yes, there's lots of things, but I think Andreas or Julius both said that it's been an enjoyable process, and it has been an enjoyable process. And I think that one of the things is that I had forgotten what it's like to be in a room full of young men that are playing all of these roles and laughing and skylarking and carrying on. Yeah. And I'm learning all these different lines and words that I've never heard before in my entire life. But, and testosterone runs wild in that type of situation. But that also reflects pretty much the situation of the guys in the play.
Yeah, exactly.
It does. It's that sort of thing. There's aggression, there is tenderness, there is hope, there's desire, there's questioning, there's all of those types of things. And this is happening in the rehearsal room. I'm going, how do I harness this? How do I get this into the play? This type of thing. It's happening. So, that's, I think, for me, that's really quite an enjoyable situation. Yeah, different.
And the season is, so the opening night is the 30th of April.
Yes.
And the play goes
till the 10th of May.
Yes.
10th of May, and people can get tickets through Humanitix, I think.
Yep.
Yes.
Now that will mean that you'll be performing on election night, I think. So anyone who's sick of hearing about elections and doesn't want to watch sort of like all of the numbers go up, then this would obviously be the place to be.
Absolutely.
Take your mind off politics.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining me on the sofa.
Thank you.
And for offering your
Who
thoughts.
said that?
Offering your thoughts and reflections on the play. Thanks, Jeff and Julius and Andreas.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rodney.